My name is Lydia, and I walked into my home one evening to find my husband in bed with my own sister. In that instant, my world shattered, but what they didn't know was that they'd awakened something stronger inside me. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about reclaiming power, dignity, and peace after the ultimate deception. From heartbreak to justice, from silence to strength, I turn my pain into purpose. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover who you truly are. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and subscribe for more powerful stories. My husband Marcus was tangled in our bedsheets with my younger sister Hannah. For a heartbeat, I thought I was hallucinating. The look on their faces was almost comical, like two kids caught stealing cookies, but the pain that shot through me made it impossible to laugh. Marcus scrambled to grab the blanket, fumbling for modesty that no longer mattered, while Hannah sat up, calm and unashamed, as if being naked in my bed was nothing but an inconvenience. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you'd have died for, you'll understand that frozen moment, the split second where your brain refuses to believe your eyes. I took a deep breath, the kind that scorches your lungs. "Lydia, I can explain," Marcus said, voice trembling. I raised a hand to stop him. "Don't," I whispered. "Just don't." Hannah shifted, her voice soft and nauseatingly calm. "Lyd, this isn't how we wanted you to find out." We. That word echoed like thunder in my skull. They'd planned this, discussed it, made peace with it. I swallowed hard. "How long?" I asked. Marcus looked at her, then back at me, guilt painting his face like war paint. 6 months. 6 months. While I was breaking my back at work to get the promotion that would finally give us the house he said we couldn't afford. 6 months of lies told over breakfast, of hugs that meant nothing, of lavender-scented sheets that smelled faintly of deceit. I glanced around the room, the bed I made yesterday, the photos of our children on the nightstand, the life I built from the ground up, and it all felt foreign. "The kids are at Mom's," I said quietly. "You've got 30 minutes to get dressed and figure out what you're going to tell them." Marcus stood, reaching for his jeans, desperation in his eyes. "Lydia, we need to talk about this like adults." I let out a sharp laugh that didn't sound like me. "Adults? You mean like adults who communicate instead of sleeping with their sister-in-law?" Hannah rolled her eyes, the same dramatic gesture she used when we were kids and she didn't get her way. "You're being dramatic," she said, like she was tired of my theatrics. I turned to face her fully. "You're naked in my bed, Hannah, using my sheets. The lavender ones you know I specially order because they help me sleep. And you think I'm the one being dramatic?" For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback. She just looked away, jaw tightening. I walked to the dresser, grabbed a sweater, and started toward the door. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked. "To pick up my children," I replied. "And when I get back, you both better be gone. Figure out your story, because Tommy's going to ask why Daddy and Aunt Hannah were having a sleepover without clothes." I didn't wait for a response. My footsteps echoed down the hallway, past the framed pictures of smiling faces that now looked like lies. Somewhere between the wedding photo and the family portrait from last Christmas, it hit me. I wasn't even surprised. Deep down, I'd always known Hannah took whatever she wanted. The drive to my parents' house gave me 12 minutes to pull myself together, to practice the mask I'd wear for my kids, to swallow the scream clawing at the back of my throat. When Mom opened the door, Flower dusted her apron and her face lit up with the same maternal concern I'd grown up resenting. "Lydia, you're early," she said. "I thought Marcus was picking them up at 6. "Change of plans," I murmured, stepping inside. The familiar smell of roast filled the air, warm and suffocating. From the living room came the sound of my children, Noah and Ella, bickering over a video game. "Mommy!" Ella squealed, running toward me, her small hands sticky with cookie dough. "Grandma let us bake cookies, but Noah ate 3 before dinner." "Did not," came Noah's protest from the couch. I knelt down and pulled Ella into a hug, inhaling the smell of sugar and innocence I wished I could protect forever. "How about we make our own cookies later?" I said softly. "But Grandma's are better," she replied honestly. Mom chuckled, wiping her hands on a towel. "She's right, you know." "Yeah," I said, standing. "She's right about a lot of things." Mom's smile faded. "Everything okay, honey?" "Ask me tomorrow," I said, forcing a smile. "We just need to get home." Noah appeared in the doorway, controller still in hand. Do I have to stop now? Yeah, champ, let's go. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Mom followed me to the door, her expression tightening. Lydia, you sure you're all right? I looked at her, the woman who raised two daughters so differently that one grew up craving approval and the other never needed to ask for it. I'm fine, I said. Just fine. The drive back was filled with the comforting sound of their chatter, Ella explaining her cookie recipe and Noah defending his video game strategy. Normal, innocent noise that felt like a lullaby against the storm brewing inside me. When we pulled into the driveway, both Hannah's red car and Marcus's truck were gone. The silence of the house was deafening. A note sat on the counter, gone to think. We'll talk tomorrow. I crumpled it without reading further. Gone to think, I muttered. How noble. I started dinner because routine was the only thing holding me together. The steady rhythm of chopping vegetables drowned out the chaos in my mind. Noah worked on homework at the table while Ella colored next to him, her little tongue sticking out in concentration. Mom, you're cutting the carrots really tiny, she said. I glanced down. She was right. I'd been shredding them into dust. Sometimes when people think too hard, they do silly things, I explained. What are you thinking about? She asked. I met her gaze, those big brown eyes so much like mine it hurt. Changes, I said softly. What kind of changes? Noah asked, glancing up. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Hannah. We need to talk. This affects the whole family. I stared at it, the audacity almost laughable. Family. She had the nerve to use that word like she hadn't just detonated ours. I ignored it, focused on helping Noah check his math homework and picking out Ella's clothes for school. I tucked them into bed later, kissed their foreheads, and stood in their doorway for a long time, memorizing their piece. When I finally went back to the living room, the weight of the day hit me like a hammer. My phone rang. Hannah's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Before you say anything, she began, her voice shaking with fake sincerity. I need you to know this wasn't planned. 6 months isn't a plan? I asked. It just happened, she said quickly. You know Marcus hasn't been happy. You work all the time. You're stressed. You barely talk to each other anymore. I walked to the window and stared into the dark. So you decided to fix my marriage by sleeping with my husband? I was just there for him, she said softly. You've been too busy to notice he's been falling apart. The manipulation rolled off her tongue effortlessly. That was Hannah's gift. She could twist any story until she looked like the hero. You're right, I said finally. She hesitated. What? You're right. I have been busy, I've been stressed, I haven't been perfect. But when my marriage felt like it was falling apart, I didn't crawl into my sister's bed. Lydia, you don't mean that. Oh, I do, I said quietly. And for once, I actually feel something close to relief. Because sometimes, Hannah, the garbage takes itself out. You just have to let it. The next morning crept in like a thief, dragging sunlight across a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I'd spent most of the night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of an empty bed. Every familiar sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant barking of the neighbor's dog, reminded me of what had been shattered. When dawn finally broke, I forced myself out of bed, put on a brave face, and began the routine that had always grounded me. I made breakfast, packed lunchboxes, and tied shoelaces, each small task anchoring me to what still mattered, Noah and Ella. They deserved a mother who didn't crumble in front of them, no matter how deep the wound. Mommy, is Daddy coming to my soccer game on Saturday? Ella asked, swinging her legs at the kitchen table. He promised he'd bring the orange slices this time. I hesitated for a moment before forcing a smile. We'll see, sweetheart. She beamed, satisfied with my vague answer, while Noah focused on his cereal like he could sense the tension. I scribbled a reminder on the notepad, buy oranges, because even if Marcus forgot again, I wouldn't let my daughter down. After dropping them off at school, I drove to Henderson Co., the marketing agency where both Marcus and I worked. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same building where we'd first met, where our love story had started over coffee and deadlines, was now the place where it would quietly die. My resignation letter sat folded neatly in my purse, right beside the divorce papers I'd printed at 3 a.m. My stomach twisted as I walked through the glass doors, the fluorescent lights suddenly harsher than usual. My assistant, Kelly, looked up from her desk. You're early, she said, surprised. Everything okay? I nodded, forcing a polite smile. Just wanted a head start. I hadn't been in my office 5 minutes before I heard the knock. The sound made my stomach drop. I didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Marcus stood in the doorway, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, like someone who hadn't slept or hadn't stopped thinking about what he'd done. "Lydia," he began quietly, "we need to talk." I kept typing, not looking up. "Not here." "Please, just 5 minutes." 5 minutes to say what? I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "That you're sorry? That it was a mistake? That Hannah seduced you? Because unless you have something new to offer, I've heard enough lies for a lifetime." He closed the door, shutting out the hallway noise, and stepped closer. "This isn't about that," he said. "It's about the kids, about what happens next." That stopped me. I turned in my chair and faced him. "You should have thought about Noah and Ella before you destroyed their family." "Lydia, please, we can work through this. People make mistakes." I laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Marcus. A mistake is missing a soccer game. What you did was a choice, a deliberate betrayal that lasted 6 months. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes glassy. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said simply. "You can't rewrite that." Silence hung heavy between us. He finally sighed. "What do you want me to do?" "Move out," I said. "I'm filing for divorce today. I'll be requesting full custody of the kids." His eyes widened. "You can't just take them from me. Watch me." At that moment, my phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Mom. "Hannah told us what happened. We need to talk. Family meeting at 7, of course. Hannah had beaten me to it. Again." I could already imagine the story she'd spun, all sugar and self-pity, painting me as the cold, overworked sister who drove her husband away. "Your sister called my parents," Marcus said, reading over my shoulder. "She thinks we should all talk it out." "Rationally?" I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. "There's nothing rational about any of this." I stood, walked to the printer, and retrieved my resignation letter. People in the hallway pretended not to look, but I could feel their curiosity burning through the glass walls. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "My resignation." His face drained of color. "Lydia, you can't quit. The kids need stability." "The insurance?" "The kids need peace, Marcus. They'll get that with me." I walked past him, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. "This is done, both here and at home." By the time I got home that evening, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. I fed the kids, helped with homework, and tried to pretend things were normal, but my mind was fixed on the confrontation waiting for me. 7 o'clock came too soon. I dropped Noah and Ella at Mom's neighbor's house, Mrs. Parker, a kind widow who adored them, and walked toward the front door of the home I grew up in. The warm yellow light spilling from the windows made my chest tighten. This house had always smelled like comfort, but tonight it reeked of judgment. They were all already there when I stepped inside. Marcus sat on the couch beside Hannah, her hand resting on his arm like she owned him. My parents sat across from them, Mom with her signature worried expression, Dad with his usual silence that said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Lydia," Mom said softly, patting the empty seat beside her. "Sit down, honey." I stayed standing. I wasn't here to make myself comfortable. "Rebecca told us what happened," Dad began awkwardly, mixing up Hannah's name like he always did when he was nervous. "This is difficult for everyone." "Difficult," I repeated, tasting the word. "That's what we're calling it now?" "Sweetheart, please don't make this harder," Mom interjected quickly. "We're all just trying to talk this through as a family." I laughed, shaking my head. "A family? That's rich." Hannah straightened, her voice soft but calculated. "Lyd, you're making this harder than it needs to be." I turned to her slowly, fury simmering just beneath the surface. "Harder? You're sitting here holding my husband's hand and telling me I'm the problem?" "He's not your husband anymore," she said quietly. "He hasn't been happy for a long time." The room went dead silent. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. Not one person, neither my father nor my mother, spoke up for me. Not one. Mom just sighed, wringing her hands. Sometimes people grow apart, she said. Sometimes marriage just ends. I stared at her in disbelief. And sometimes sisters sleep with their brother-in-law, I replied coldly. But maybe that's just another kind of family bonding, huh? Lydia, Mom scolded sharply. Language. Oh, I'm sorry. Should I call it advanced sisterly support instead? I asked. Hannah's cheeks flushed. You're twisting things, she snapped. This isn't about betrayal. It's about love. Marcus and I didn't plan this. It just happened. I almost laughed. 6 months of sneaking around doesn't just happen, Hannah. That's not love. That's selfishness wrapped in delusion. Marcus finally spoke, voice low. Lydia, I know I hurt you, but this, what Hannah and I have, it's real. I stared at him, numb. You destroyed a family to chase something real? Congratulations. I hope it's worth it. We're not trying to hurt anyone, Hannah added. I turned to her and the calm in my voice surprised me. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you opened your legs in my house. Mom gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Lydia? No, I said firmly. We're done pretending. You all wanted honesty. Well, there it is. I looked around the room at the people who were supposed to have my back and realized just how alone I really was. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm filing for divorce. I'll have primary custody of Noah and Ella. Marcus can see them on weekends once he finds somewhere else to live. You can't keep them from their father? Mom protested. I'm not keeping them from their father, I said. I'm keeping them from the chaos their father created. Hannah stood, her tone sharp now. You're being vindictive, Lyd. This isn't about the kids. It's about your pride. I tilted my head, studying her. You know what? You're right. This is about pride. I'm proud that I kept my vows. I'm proud that I never betrayed someone who trusted me. I'm proud that when life got hard, I didn't destroy someone else's happiness just to feel better about myself. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Dad rubbed his temples, muttering something about everyone needing time to cool off, but I barely heard him. I looked at each of them one last time, my parents, who'd always believed Hannah could do no wrong, my sister, who'd taken everything I loved, and Marcus, the man who'd let her. You all make me sick, I said quietly. And you'll see soon enough that I don't need any of you to survive this. I turned toward the door, my hands trembling but my heart strangely steady. As I walked out into the cool night air, one thought kept repeating in my mind like a vow. They thought they'd broken me. But what they didn't realize was that betrayal doesn't destroy strong women. It forges them. The night air was cold, sharp against my skin, as I stepped outside my parents' house, leaving behind the muffled chaos of voices trying to justify the unjustifiable. I walked down the familiar path to my car, each step grounding me in a new kind of silence, one that didn't ache but burned. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the door, but by the time I slid into the driver's seat, the shaking stopped. Anger has a way of steadying you when sorrow can't. I didn't cry that night. Not once. I drove home with both hands gripping the steering wheel, headlights slicing through the dark as if carving a path out of the wreckage of my old life. When I got home, the house was still and heavy, but it no longer scared me. The faint lavender scent that used to calm me now smelled like poison, yet I let it linger, a reminder of what I'd survived. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the stack of papers in front of me. Divorce forms, property agreements, financial statements. The life Marcus and I had built now existed only in numbers and signatures. I picked up a pen, the simplest weapon I'd ever held, and began filling them out. Each line I signed felt like reclaiming something he and Hannah had tried to take from me. My dignity, my strength, my story. By morning, I'd made up my mind. No hesitation, no second guessing. I dropped the kids at school, kissed their cheeks, and promised them we'd bake cookies that night. Then I drove straight to the courthouse. The clerk, a kind older woman with tired eyes, handed me the official forms and said gently, "Take your time, dear." But I didn't need time. I'd had 6 months of lies to prepare for this. I filed for divorce right then and there. Walking out of that courthouse, the November wind stung my face, but I smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't happiness exactly, it was freedom with a bitter edge. Later that afternoon, I went to the office to clear out my things. Kelly helped me pack the framed photos, the notebooks, the mug Marcus had given me years ago that said, "Boss Lady." I left the mug on the desk. It belonged to another version of me, one who believed love was safe when built on trust. As I walked out for the last time, Marcus appeared by the elevators, his tie loose, eyes red. "You really did it," he said quietly. "You filed." "Yes," I replied. "You should have seen that coming." He stepped closer. "Lydia, please don't do this in anger." I looked at him and felt an almost frightening calm. "This isn't anger, Marcus. Anger fades. This is clarity." He looked like he wanted to say something more, but the elevator dinged and I stepped inside without waiting to hear it. Watching the doors close between us felt symbolic, like sealing a coffin on something that had long been dead. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my life in quiet, deliberate steps. I found a smaller place for me and the kids, one with big windows and a tiny garden where Ella could plant her sunflowers. The furniture didn't match, the walls were still bare, but it was ours. Every night after the kids went to bed, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea and let the silence wash over me. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Of course, peace didn't last long. Hannah started showing up at my parents' house with Marcus, pretending everything was normal, like their affair had been nothing but a bad rumor. Mom invited them to Sunday dinners, smiling like she was starring in some twisted family sitcom. I stopped going. Instead, I spent Sundays at the park with Noah and Ella, teaching them to ride their bikes, cheering them on as they raced down the path. The laughter of my children became the sound of my healing. One afternoon, about a month later, I was at the grocery store when I saw them, Marcus and Hannah, in the produce aisle. He looked older, worn out, like guilt had etched new lines on his face. She, on the other hand, had that same smug glow of someone who thought she'd won. I almost walked past without a word, but she spotted me first. "Lydia," she said, her voice fake sweet. "It's good to see you. You look different." "Free?" I offered. "Yes, actually." Marcus cleared his throat. "How are the kids?" "They're great," I said. "Happy, stable, everything you two aren't." I reached for a bag of apples, my tone casual. Funny thing about betrayal, it's heavy to carry, isn't it? Hannah's smile faltered. "We didn't mean for things to happen this way." "Oh, I know," I said. "Things just happen when you're weak and selfish." I left before either of them could reply, and as I pushed the cart toward the checkout, I realized something. I didn't hate them anymore. Hatred meant they still had power over me, and I'd taken that back the moment I walked away. A few months later, the divorce was finalized. The court granted me full custody, with Marcus getting weekends, though he missed half of them anyway. I didn't fight it. The less time my children spent around that chaos, the better. Mom tried to convince me to forgive, to keep the family together, but forgiveness, I learned, isn't something you owe to people who aren't sorry. It's something you do for yourself. And I'd already forgiven the only person who needed it, me. The day I moved the last box into our new home, I found an old photo album at the bottom of a trunk. Inside were pictures of me and Hannah as kids, matching dresses, Christmas mornings, family trips where I was always half a step behind her. I stared at one picture for a long time, us sitting side by side on a swing, smiling like we'd never hurt each other. I closed the book gently and put it away. Some memories are too heavy to carry forward, and I was done being weighed down. That night I stood in the kitchen, the same lavender scent wafting through the air, but this time it didn't make me angry. It reminded me that peace could grow from pain if you gave it space to breathe. Noah and Ella were at the table, drawing and laughing, the sound so pure it filled the room. "Mommy," Ella said suddenly, "can we make cookies like Grandma's?" I smiled, pulling out the mixing bowl. "Sure, baby, but ours will be better." As we stirred the dough together, flour dusting our hands, I realized that everything I'd lost had made room for everything I still had. The life I was rebuilding wasn't smaller, it was stronger. And while Marcus and Hannah could live with the ghosts of their choices, I was free. Later that evening, when the kids were asleep, I recorded a short clip for my storytelling channel, the one where I shared real stories about betrayal, love, and justice. The camera light blinked red, and I looked straight into the lens. "My name is Lydia," I began, my voice steady, "and this is the story of how my sister and my husband betrayed me, and how that betrayal became the best thing that ever happened in my life. Because sometimes you don't lose everything. You just lose what was never real." I paused, smiling softly. Tell me where you're watching from today, and if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from ashes, know this: you can rise again, just like I did. I ended the recording, sat back, and watched the playback. For the first time in months, I saw myself. Not the broken wife or the betrayed sister, but a woman who had survived fire and come out gold. The house was quiet, the world was still, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of wow.